Um, okay, so this is the April 26th Trilogy Gun Club meeting. We're glad to have Ken from GunsPlus here, and I'll have Ken introduce himself, and we'll get started. So, Ken?
Okay, hello. Good morning, everyone. So, my name is Ken Sempt. I've been teaching firearms for over, well, at least 40 years or maybe longer. I don't know. I've kind of lost track of how long it's been. It's been such a long time. Initially, I started being involved with guns when I was pretty young. My father was career military, so he was Army. He was World War II vet. He was 82nd Airborne, but we traveled all over the world, lived in all different places. And so I got introduced to guns at a pretty young age. You know, so I think about 9 years old, I had my first pellet rifle to start shooting. And then, of course, I went in the military myself. I was a Navy hospital corpsman. I was attached to the Marines. Did a tour in Vietnam. Got wounded on Operation Arizona. That was what they call the Arizona Territory. And then when I got out of the military, I ended up in the nuclear industry. Initially working for York Corporation in their engineering lab. But then later I got bored with that after about 7 years. I'm like, I need something else to do. So I'll get into nuclear security. Well, lo and behold, the guy that hired me was a Marine, and Marines love their corpsmen. And they're like, look, he goes, Doc, you guys can do anything. So, and I moved up really quick in the industry, and I became a consultant, and that's how I ended up out here. I was out at Palo Verde doing consulting to them on their security program. I was there for 3 years. And then at the end of the 3 years, I was supposed to leave here and go to South Texas Project in Bay City, Texas. And I'm thinking like, I bet it's really hot and humid down in Bay City, Texas, And I kind of liked Arizona, and I think, I think I'm going to stay here. So I started my own company, and it was called, and it's still our corporation. GunsPlus is a DBA of Security Enforcement Services. So initially we started off doing private investigations, and I started teaching the CCW classes about 30 years ago when they first started here in the state, and it was tough at first because I'll be like, I got one student. I'm like, is it really going to be worth doing this? If I got one student, but I'd go ahead and do the class on a one-on-one. And of course the classes started growing, and then pretty soon I'd have 10 students, 20 students. I think the largest class I ever did, and it was one of the best classes, was for an American Legion post. And they came to me and said, hey, can you teach a CCW class for the post? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, well, we got 55 members that want to go to the class. I'm like, you know what? Okay, but what we're going to do, we're going to run it like it's a military operation. And they all could relate to that. So even with 55, they were all, well organized, and they listened to the commands when I gave them. They all did what they were supposed to do. And it really went quite smooth for that many people in a class. So we've been teaching the classes here in the state for a long time. And a lot has changed with the concealed carry, because initially it was a 16-hour course that the state actually mandated. And this is the information and criteria that you're going to use. And all the instructors had to go to DPS for a class to be certified as a Department of Public Safety concealed carry instructor. And then as the years went by, things started changing. Like somebody decided, well, it should only be a one-day class. So then they cut it down to 8 hours. And then pretty much now where we're at, the instructor can pretty much do what he wants. They don't have to go get certified by DPS. As long as they're a firearms instructor, they can teach the course. And, it's kind of a shame because some of the instructors don't even provide their students to qualify on the range. And I don't see how they do that, because if you look at the back of the application, you're signing an affidavit that you demonstrated proficiency with a firearm. I'm like, okay, I don't know how my students are going to demonstrate proficiency with a firearm if I don't take them to the range and have them qualify, right? So that's one of the things that we do when we're doing the class. We still do them all. We do all of them out of Ben Avery. And the CCW class itself, of course, we've had to trim it down a little bit because, initially when they cut it back to, like an 8-hour class, I still offered the 16 at the same price. I'm like, okay, but what I found out, most people are going to take the easy route. If they only have to do an 8-hour class, that's all they're going to do. So pretty much our class now is probably about 6 hours. We go over a lot with the Arizona laws, which I think are extremely important. And then people will say to me, why do I really need to get a CCW? Well, you really don't. I mean, you know, in Arizona, we have legislation that passed you can carry concealed without a permit. You know, and I tell them, I said, well, here's the big benefit. Now I get a lot of retired law enforcement guys that come to the shop and they'll be like, well, I don't have to take it. All I have to do is get fingerprinted, sign off, send my application, and same with military, you know, prior military, don't have to take the class. They can just send a copy of their DD 214 and the application and they can get the permit. And I'll just look at them and tell them, I'll say, hey, how much do you know about Arizona law? Because most of you came from somewhere else and the laws are different from where you came from, you know, and when can you shoot, when can you not shoot is an important thing that you should all know, because, you know, obviously there are times under Arizona law, you can threaten the use of deadly force, but you cannot actually use it. But, you know, to me, I'm like, if you're threatening, you better be prepared to use it, you know, but that's one of the laws when you're protecting property, especially if somebody's criminally trespassing on your land. You can threaten them with deadly force, but you cannot actually use it unless they become a threat to you.
How is threat defined?
Yeah, well, threat is if you feel that your life is in imminent danger of either grave bodily harm or death, then that's justification for the use of deadly force. Yeah.
It's pretty subjective though.
Yeah, it is. Well, the laws always are. I mean, let's face it, you know, it's left up to interpretation, you know, and depending on what happens in court, you know, and if you're involved in a shooting, are you probably going to go to court? Well, there's a good possibility you will, you know, and that's one of the things I tell everybody, you need to be prepared for that. Hopefully you got good legal representation, you know, if you end up going to court. I mean, and I tell people, and I've worked with the county prosecutor's office and I've worked with the public defender's office before. And I can tell you this, if you're involved in a shooting, you know, and you need a public defender because you can't afford an attorney, of course, the state will appoint 140. And I've worked with them and they're good attorneys. They're usually younger attorneys that are getting started, you know, but the problem is, one time I was working on a murder case and it was kind of a unique situation where this guy had a public defender and a private attorney, which does not normally happen, but I was working for the private attorney, you know, and so I called the public defender's office and I said, hey, maybe we should all get together and have a meeting so we don't waste resources, because I don't know what you're doing, you don't know what I'm doing, and so let's have a meeting, decide what we should be doing. And they're like, well, that's a great idea, why don't you come downtown and meet with us? And I said, okay. So I went down there and I had a list of people that I thought we should obviously interview, you know, question. And so I said, hey, here's a list of people that we need to interview. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you mean? I was meeting with the attorney and the private, or the investigator that was working on that case. And the investigator said, well, I don't have time to do that. I'm like, why? I'm working on 10 murder cases right now. I do not have time to get up from my desk. The best I could do is make phone calls. I'm like, well, you really can't interview somebody with a problem. You need to go there, talk to them. You got to look at their body language. You got to, you know, get a feel for what they're really telling you, if they're telling you the truth. And the attorney said, yeah, I'm working on the same 10 murder cases, you know. Now, the same case, the county prosecutor's office, they sent a team of investigators, I mean, like 4 of them, up to Alaska to interview people that knew this guy, right? But the public defender's team didn't have the time to get up from their desk because they were overworked. They had too many cases that they were trying to work on. So I came to this conclusion. If the state is prosecuting you, they have unlimited funds. if the state is defending you, they're on a limited budget, trust me. So obviously, if you can have your own private attorney, that is desirable, you know. I actually have, and I didn't bring the information, I probably should have, but we have it at the shop. It's called US Law Shield. Okay, so what they do is, you know, they'll say, well, we're not legal insurance. And I'm like, well, you really are. You know, you might say you're not. They say, hey, we're legal representation. If you're involved in a shooting, we have attorneys in every state that specialize in self-defense situations, and they'll represent you depending on what state you're in. And, you know, it's like $10.95 a month, and it's unlimited. I mean, there's no budget, like there's no cap on how much money your trial is going to cost. As a matter of fact, there's a guy, remember the shooting at the church in Texas? And remember, the guy was a firearms instructor, the one that finally made the fatal shot from 15 yards away. But of course, he had to take his time. It's 15 yards. It's quite a good distance, especially with a lot of people that are panicking when there's shooting going on. And he had to go to court. And he had US Law Shield. And they paid for his defense. And his defense was over $300,000. So, you know, so there's no cap on how much it costs, and if you go to trial. And they're also, if let's say they lose the case, they will appeal and they will pay for your appeal as well. So to me, it's like a no-brainer. You know, you want to be paying some attorney $750 an hour, because that's the average here in Phoenix. Or do you want to have something that covers you for self-defense situations, which to me makes better sense to do that, because their attorneys specialize in that, they're trained in that. So it's called US Law Shield, and they do have a website. You can go on and check it out, or you can stop by the shop and I can give you some information. So let me ask you a little bit about your club. You know, we're a shooting club, but what kind of sports do we participate in as a club?
Really, everybody does their own thing. Some of us, we've had outings. So we've gone to Ben Avery, we've gone to Cowtown, we've gone to Scottsdale Gun Club, we've gone to C2 Tactical, we've gone to Shooter's World. Some of us got together, we were in the Clay Shooting League up at Ben Avery. I'm mostly in shotguns. I don't have any pistols at all, but there's quite a variety in the group.
Oh, Wolfenberg. You need a pistol. Well, I'm not saying that a shotgun's not good home defense. It's obviously probably the best.
Not concealed weapons,
but not for concealed carry. A little difficult. So we'll probably have to get you a pistol. But if you're the kind of guy that you're more into shotguns, we'll get you a Judge, and it shoots a 410 shell.
Oh, okay. Well, Joe's got a pistol I really
revolver.
like. Yeah. Well, Joe, what's that pistol that we were using?
Like the MP5?
Yeah.
No, the MP5. Yeah, excellent gun. But you know, we'll talk a little bit about self-defense and security in your own home as well today.
Yeah.
But you know, one of the things, so you do clay targets. Ben Avery's a great facility. They just put over $2 million into their clay target center not too long ago. So I know they continuously put money into it and upgrade it. And they have sporting clays, they have skeet, they have trap. Anything else I'm missing they got out there?
They have an archery range too.
Oh yeah, they have an archery range if you're into archery, and they have a 3D archery range, which is quite interesting. I've shot that before. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, that facility has every shooting sport imaginable. I mean, and there's so many opportunities to shoot in different clubs. They have 3-gun, which is basically some clubs that put on a 3-gun shoot. I think they do it on Thursday night. I think it's called Cactus League. So, you know, that's a pistol, shotgun, and rifle, you know, and they're more modern weapons they use than SAS, Single Action Shooting Society. Those are the cowboy shooters. They do a lot of shooting out at Ben Avery. They do a lot of Cowtown as well. There's probably a shoot over at Cowtown almost every week, you know, for cowboy shooting. But Ben Avery, even and I'm involved in it. That's why I don't live here at your beautiful golf community, because I'm not a golfer. I'm into horses. Now my horses would love to live here and eat your grass out on your golf course. They'd love that. But I'm into cowboy mounted shooting, and Ben Avery was the first public mounted shooting facility in the world. You know, so Game and Fish gave us like 17 acres and said, here, you guys take that, you develop it, you know, you build it, but you can have your shooting facility here. So it really is an amazing facility. They got a 1,000-yard rifle range. So if you guys are into long range shooting, that's available out there as well. They've got the public range. So let's say you just want to go and shoot a little bit on your own, you can go to the public range. Now, when you go as a group out there, do you get your own private range?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, Chris and I, we were in the target league,
Yeah.
skeet league, skeet clay target.
Yeah.
And then we just did the sporting targets. So no, we didn't, as a club, we haven't reserved anything.
So you,
We did go out there for pistols one time. We had a whole group and we did, they did a class on maintenance. And then they had a part of the pistol range were reserved for us.
yeah, and yeah, because you have to be what they call a user group
Yeah.
to rent any of the private ranges. Like we've done that for 30 years out there. So, and if your club ever wants to get together and decide you want to have a CCW class or something as a group, I can do that, you know, for you. We've done that before. And usually like if we come here and we do the class in your classroom, so we don't have to rent one of theirs, and then we go to the range, you know, to qualify, that saves you a bunch of money. We give you a big discount on it because we don't have to pay them for the building that we normally rent. And or if you want to go do some basic marksmanship classes, like you got beginners or any of you brand new shooters. Pretty much, well, you are. I mean, you aren't as far as shotgun, but as
Well, I just started shotgun in September. So,
oh, okay, you're new all the way around.
Yeah.
And you're relatively new to shooting as well.
Yep.
Okay, so
2020.
right now, one of the things, and this is one of the things that I'm really passionate about. You know, if you're going to get involved with firearms, you're going to have one for your own protection, which I strongly believe that we all should. If you look at today's society and what's going on out in the world, I don't want to leave home without my gun. Well, it's in my car right now, so I hope I don't need it. It'll take me a while to get to it. But I'd rather have it with me every day and not need it than not have it the one time that you need it, because then it's going to be too late, you know? And I mean, there's a lot more violence in the world today than there used to be. I mean, you know, we're all about the same age. When we went to school, there wasn't anybody going to school shooting everybody. If you had a disagreement or a conflict with somebody out in the parking lot, or when I went to school, I mean, if you were arguing in the classroom or anything and you got caught, the teacher would just say, hey, come on, let's go down to the gym and put the gloves on and let's settle this right now. But you know, that's not what happens nowadays. Nowadays, these kids get a hold of guns and, you know, we got all these school shootings and mass shootings. So obviously it's better to have a gun with you. Hopefully you never need it though, you know, but you know, gun safety is extremely important. I mean, that's the most, I don't care how many classes you teach, and I don't know how many classes you go to. The first thing they should be talking to you in each and every one of those classes is about gun safety and maintaining a good, safe environment out on that range when you're there, you know? So I'll refresh you a little bit on what's the number one firearm safety rule.
All guns are loaded.
Well, okay, so that is true. That was, but now I've replaced that one. That's now number 2. Okay, so you know what number 1 is? No, nope.
No.
Number 1 is never give your gun to the government. Never. That's the number 1 safety rule. There must be a reason that they want them. So obviously you need it, right? That's the number 1 safety rule. Never give your gun to the government. 2 is to treat all guns as loaded. Okay, what's number 3 normally? Always
Point it at something unless you intend to destroy it.
right. Always point it in a safe direction. You know, and in selecting a safe direction, there are other things to consider, like where will this bullet go? What's your backdrop? Where is it going to impact? If it ricochets, where could it go? You know, at Ben Avery, I'll tell you what, when we're out on the small bore range, they always tell us, oh, go down to the berm. We want you shooting at the berm because we're shooting pistols and it's a rifle range. Man, I'm telling you, you would not believe the ricochets that come over our heads from the main range all the time. But I tell the guys, don't worry, you won't hear the one that gets you. You know, don't worry about that. So, but yeah, there's an issue with ricochets there. And that's why they tell us we don't want you shooting from back because you cause ricochets for the main range. Well, that's okay if we get them over here, apparently. You know, luckily they're always going over your head because the berm's high enough to keep them going, hopefully, over your head and into that mountain. So, yeah, so finger off the trigger, right? Until you're ready to shoot, right? Always. And then another thing is to always maintain control of your gun. You know, so if it's not in your possession, make sure it's locked up. You know, and obviously in your home, locking it up in the gun safe is the safest way to secure those weapons, you know, so. And for years, I never had a gun safe. And I'm like, go away. I'd always be worried about my guns. I would lock them in things like filing cabinets with a bar and a lock, you know, hoping that if somebody broke in, they didn't get into the filing cabinet where the guns were secured. And then finally I said, you know what, I need to get a gun safe. And I got my first gun safe. And I felt a lot more secure about leaving the house and going out and or going away for the weekend and coming back. I know my guns are going to be there because they're in the safe, you know, so. And then over the years, of course, I've had to get a couple more safes because obviously your collection grows, you know. But, you know, there are anybody here that's a gun collector? No, but there are people that collect all kind of guns, and some of the older guns are worth a lot of money. You know, I was with Bob James at Ben Avery one day. He was at a cowboy shoot and he was going to set up a Legendary. He works for them doing their gunsmithing, and I had to bring a gun to him for one of my customers for him to work on. And so I said, I'll just meet you out at the range. So he did, and then he handed me this gun. He's like, hey, you want to look at this? I'm like, man, sure. No one zips it, takes it out. It's a Colt Walker. And I'm like, whoa, that's nice. You want to hold it? Sure. Let me see it. Well, it's really nice. He goes like, I go, how much is this gun? Oh, 75. I'm like, 7,500? No, $75,000. I'm like, here, I don't not want to hold this guy. Take it back. It's too expensive for me. But, you know, so there are people that collect guns. There is a variety of sports that you can get involved in. You can get in play target, which is a lot of fun. Skeet, trap, sporting clays. I love sporting clays. That's really a lot of fun because they come from all different directions. You don't know where they're going to come. They're bouncing on the ground, the rabbit. They got things coming from behind you to shoot. They got things coming at you. They got things crossing. You never know in sporting clays which way that thing's coming. So it's kind of more of a, I think more of a challenge. I think it's more like actual an environment that would be closer to hunting than any of the others, you know. But anyway, you could get involved in clay birds. You could get involved in combat shooting or tactical shooting or defensive shooting, which I love to do. You know, I'm more of a type A personality. So, you know, years ago, one of the guys that used to teach out there all the time would teach black powder and would say, you need to come shoot with us. Like, yeah, I don't think I have the patience for that. Ramrod and putting your ball in, putting your powder and putting your ball in, packing it, you know, and then start all over. I'm like, no, I like to get in there and, you know, have a little fun with those guns and get those guns working. But so we do a lot of defensive training. As a matter of fact, when we do our self-defense training, I tell everybody, anyone can really do it. I kind of try to adapt classes to accommodate all different levels, you know. So I tell everybody starts out at some place, right? And speed will come with practice. I mean, you're not going to go out there and be the fastest guy drawing your weapon out of the holster and acquiring a target. But I tell my people in my holster class, that's the number one in the defensive training. I tell them, hey, you know what? Our objective is that you're able to draw from your holster, acquire a critical vital area, and get 2 to 3 shots off in 2 seconds. And everybody's like, wow, that's fast. You know, by the end of the day, most of those people are getting 4 to 5 shots off in 2 seconds. 2 seconds is a little bit longer than you think, you know, and you need to know how to draw quickly, but the key word is safely out of your holster if you're going to be drawing out of a holster. And we do a lot of dry fire exercises in that class. I mean, we don't go to live fire until I'm satisfied that everyone has the technique down, they're doing it correctly, they're not endangering themselves, you know, because the highest incident of people shooting themselves with their own guns is coming out of the holster and going back in the holster, right? That's the highest incident of people shooting themselves with their own guns. Now, knock on wood, I've never had any of my students shoot themselves in the class. I've been out at Ben Avery a couple times when that has happened, and you know, and I'm always curious. You know, I see an ambulance come to the range next to me. I'm like, oh, well, I wonder what the hell happened over there. You know, I remember one day I was at the rifle range and at the Department of Public Safety range. Here comes a fire truck. Here comes an ambulance. I'm like, well, I'm better go find out what happened. So, you know, I go over and there was 2 instructors and 2 students. That was it. And I go, what happened? One of my students, she shot herself in the leg. Do you have one-on-one instructors? How did that happen? You're not paying that close of attention to your students if that happens. You know, and first of all, her finger shouldn't have been in the trigger when she went to reholster. You know, but it was. And he goes, well, she's a graduate from Front Sight. I said, I don't care. I mean, obviously you're in charge, you're teaching her. I don't care what level you think she's at. You have to understand what level she's really at.
What's Front Sight?
But
What is Front Sight?
well, it's a company over by Vegas. It's in Pahrump, Nevada. And it's a big facility. It was supposed to be originally, and I think it's slowly getting to where they want it, but it's taken a lot of years. It's not really where they want it. But it's a master planned community is what it's supposed to be. So you as a shooter, you want to go over there, you want to live over there. And they shoot fully automatics. They shoot all kind of stuff on their ranges. You buy a home and it's a shooting community, you know. Now that not everyone has to live there to participate in it. They give classes, and they were supposed to be building a hotel there for, you know, I know they did a campground so that you had an RV, you could park there and then take one of their classes. And then originally I heard they were doing a hotel over there, so they'd have it for the people that are coming, you know, to shoot. But it's a pretty big facility. It's just not really taken off the way they thought. I mean, as far as people actually building homes in there and living in a shooting community, it's been a little bit slower. But, you know, one of my instructors that teaches with me, he went over there, he took their instructor course, their Front Sight instructor course. And then I asked him when he came back, I said, so how was it? What did you actually, you know? He said, well, it's really a lot that we teach in our advanced courses, a lot of the same stuff, you know. So I didn't have the opportunity to go over there, but I'm sure it's a pretty good facility, you know. So anyway, if you want to get into defensive shooting, if you want a gun for your protection, if you're new, you should take a basic course. Really, I get guys in my CCW classes all the time, or ladies. I don't see any ladies in your club, so you know, you'll probably get a few ladies.
We have some.
You have some?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You know, they'll come to my CCW class and then I'll watch them and it's obvious they shouldn't be. They're not at that level yet. They should have taken a basic class and learned basic marksmanship and safety, you know. And I've gone to classes all the time. If I get the opportunity to take someone's class, I'm going to take it because I'm going to guarantee I'm going to learn something from them that I can take back to my classes. You know, so I remember one time they were doing an ILFE conference out at Ben Avery. It's a big law enforcement conference. And they called me and they said, hey, we don't have enough instructors to teach this class. Would you be willing to teach 2 classes? And if you taught 2 classes, you could take the rest of the week, all the courses for free. And that was $1,000 course. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. I'll teach 2 classes. And they're like, well, you pick the 2 you want to teach. I'm like, okay. So I looked down at the list of classes they had, and I said, okay, I'll teach the motor survival skills for motor officers, and I'll teach the night parking class. Okay. So when I had the opportunity to take some classes, there were all type of classes being given out there, all different types of levels of different classes. And I thought, I'm gonna take this guy's basic marksmanship class and safety class, because I had not taken one for years. It's just been a long time since I'd gone to a basic class. And I went to his class, and just the way he described things and the way he described the terminology was a different way than I'd ever heard anybody present it. I'm like, I couldn't believe how much better I shot after I listened to his instruction that day. And I've been an instructor for, 40 years, but he taught in a way that I understood it a little bit better than I had in the past. And I was amazed how much better I shot. And I'm like, hey, I'm a fairly experienced shooter, but I went to a basic class and I learned something. So you can always learn something in somebody's class, trust me. But if you're a new shooter, like your new basic class is extremely important because it teaches safety and marksmanship. And we kind of just keep it at that. We don't give you too much information because you can be overloaded with information, but not a good idea. And then after that, I tell everybody the CCW class is probably the next progression to go to that and get your permit. The advantage of having a concealed weapons permit rather not having it, because obviously in Arizona, we have 3 ways that you can carry a gun legally. We have open carry, which there are not many states that have an open carry law, which means the gun must be in, well, the way the law is written, it says the gun must be within the normal observation of an ordinary person. So the guy off the street looks at you, oh, he's armed, right? So that is the definition of open carry. So we have that luxury if we want to. I think you're at a better advantage to have a concealed carry. I mean, I know guys that have gotten shot because they were open carry and that somebody wanted the gun, so the element of surprise in a self-defense situation is going to work on your behalf. Better for you to have a concealed weapon. Now, we have constitutional carry, which means you can carry concealed without a permit. You do not have to take a class. Now, however, in the constitutional carry, you can't carry in all the same places because there are some laws that require that you have the permit to carry in certain areas. So much better off to have the permit. The permit's good in 37 states. So if you're traveling out of state, except the left coast, you can't go over there. The whole left coast is a big no-no, because we have all the socialist countries over there, like Washington, Oregon, California. Yeah. And unfortunately, they don't recognize our permit over there. So in none of those states. So you can't carry. But it is a good idea to get a concealed carry permit. I tell everybody, hey, you're better off having that permit. And the big thing about getting the permit is the education on the gun laws here in this state. And also, if you're traveling out of state and you have the permit, I tell everybody it's your responsibility to know that state's laws, because their laws are going to be different than ours. But if you're carrying in their state, it's your responsibility to know their laws, which usually you go online and look at their Department of Public Safety, and they'll usually have their gun laws there that you can review, And there are some apps out there now that you put on your phone that tell you the gun laws, if you're traveling.
What kind of app?
Going into Oklahoma, what are the laws pertaining to carrying a gun in Oklahoma? And you'll learn specific things like, can you legally carry it in your vehicle loaded? Can you take it into an establishment licensed of alcohol for consumption? And or what's the procedure if I get stopped by a law enforcement officer in this state? What's the requirements and that? So.
What app would that be?
It's called CCW Guide to 50 States. It'll come up and it'll look like a map of the United States. And it'll have CCW across it. And it will have all the,
Is that
laws
so-
for each state.
Do you have to subscribe to that?
Yeah, you do. I think it's $1.99 to join, and then it's 99 cents a year after that. It's very reasonable, but it's a good idea if you're traveling. Because one thing, if you're traveling out of state, what states actually recognize our permit, and if they don't, what are the laws, in that state, requiring how to transport the gun legally. So in case you get stopped, like California is ridiculous. The gun has to be locked up. It has to be unloaded, and the ammunition has to be locked in a separate compartment. I'm like, well, the gun's going to do absolutely no good because you got your ammo in your glove box. You got your gun locked in the center console, and if you needed it, you wouldn't be able to get to it in time, but that's the way you have to legally transport in California. So it's good to know if you're in a state that doesn't recognize our permit.
What was the full name again of the?
It's, let me see if I can find it and bring it up here for you. CCW Guide to 50 States. See if we bring the picture of it. So it's the complete 50 state guide to concealed carry laws. And it has concealed carry laws in every US state. And then you'll just whatever state you want to find out about, you just click on. Like now it's going to tell you about Alabama and how they're rated and what the requirements are. So it's a good thing to have.
Are there other gun apps that you'd recommend for different purposes?
Well, there are so many gun apps out there now. I mean, and YouTube videos on how to clean guns. And, there's a lot of different apps out there. There's a good book that is written by Alan Coren, and it's called The Arizona Gun Owner's Guide. And Alan Coren is the author of that book, and it has all your Arizona laws. I tell everybody it's really a good book to have. Even if you're coming to our class, I say, hey, it's not a bad book to get to review before the class. We're going to go over all the laws in the class, but it's just a very easy book because what he does is he'll have the legal terminology for the certain law, but then he'll have the really more of he'll explain it in lay terms rather than legal terms. So it's easier to understand what it actually means. And that's one thing I like about his book, because sometimes we read the legal terminology and it's kind of confusing. And then if you read the lay terminology, it's better to understand it, So anyway.
Why don't you tell us about the store?
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little bit about the store. So the store started.
Where's it at?
It's on Dysart Road in Surprise. When I opened that gun shop, there were 7,000 people in Surprise. Really. I mean, that's all there was there. Most of the population was in that little old part of town behind the shop. Everything in front of the shop was all orchards, all orchards. Happy Trails was out Bell Road if you went out further. That was at one time owned by the Roy Rogers Corporation. And so they were there. They've been there a long time. And that riverboat, which does the bingo, where that was there way back when. And in Surprise, that was about it. I mean, and then I bought a house at the time, because I was out of Palo Verde, at Coyote Lakes Golf Course. It sat between Sun City and Sun City West. And I went out there golfing at the course with some of the clients from Palo Verde. And I assumed that it was a retirement community because it was between Sun City and Sun City West, you know. So I thought, well, I'm gonna just go up and check out the, you know, at one of the open houses and ask them. And I got up and go, no, because at that point, way back then, I was too young for a retirement community. I couldn't get into one at that point, you know. So I'm like, oh, so it's not a retirement community. No, so I bought a home there, you know, and lived there on the golf course. So when I left Palo Verde, I decided, well, I need something to do. I was supposed to go to South Texas Project, and I decided not to go. So I need to start my own company. So I started Security Enforcement Services, and initially all we did was firearms training and investigations, and that's what we were doing. So I would be at the gun shows trying to promote the CCW classes, and you know, so I'd be there trying to sell the classes, you know, and I'd look around, I'd say, well, you know what, I could be selling some of those concealment holsters while I'm trying to, you know, promote the class. And then next thing you know, I'd be at another gun show, and I'd be like, well, I could be selling some of those fanny packs for concealment purposes. You know, pretty soon I had tables full of stuff. Then I'm like, hey, maybe you should just open a gun store. So I thought, okay. And since I lived in Surprise, because I lived at Coyote Lakes, I decided, well, I'm going to open one here. And everybody, what are you, crazy? There's nothing out there. I'm like, well, you know, I'm going to tell you, if I build a gun store, they will come. And they did. Now look, we got probably 200,000 at least. I mean, if you count the snowbirds and everything that live in the area, it has grown tremendously. So when I first opened the gun store, I opened in the little corner in that same plaza, and it was 700 square feet. And I was only one working it. Me and my Weimaraner, you know, she was there with me. And we were at pretty small shop. You know, we didn't have a lot of inventory when we first got started. Most of my customers came from Sun City West, though, because even though that, you know, that's in the county, it was close, and that's where I would draw the customers from there, and Sun City as well. So that's where most of my customers came from initially when I first opened the store. Eventually, we moved down to a bigger spot that was like 1,000 square feet. And then a little bit later than that, I asked the owner of the plaza, can I knock this wall out and take this other suite? And he's like, sure, go ahead, you know. And then eventually the one that was in the center was an art studio, and they closed down, and that was bigger yet. So I said, hey, how about if I move down to the center there, and I'll be your kind of your anchor store for the plaza, you know. So that's how the store all got started. That was 30 years ago. It's been interesting. I mean, you know, to start out with a small shop like that and have it grow and get larger. COVID was a challenging time for the gun industry, and it's still kind of a challenging time right now. But when COVID first hit, we had literally 50 people lined up out the door. And at first I'm like, why do they all want to buy guns? It's a virus. You can't shoot a virus, you know. And then I finally dawned on me, hey, they're all worried about if this thing gets out of control and out of hand, that there will be looting and people breaking into your home, and they're worried and they're scared and they want to get guns for protection. So the most challenging thing there was trying to make sure we had all this group of new shooters coming in, or most of them were brand new because they didn't own guns before, to try to talk them into taking classes so they could be responsible gun owners, you know, because when you have a gun and it's in your possession, it's your responsibility. One, you need to be a good marksman. If you do get involved in a shooting out in public, and we have one of our classes that we teach that's kind of different than what most people teach. And it's a active shooter scenario, you know. So in that class, we have targets that are moving through non-shoot targets. We have shoot targets, a lot of non-shoot targets, because in an active shooter scenario, you're going to have a lot of innocent people, and your responsibility not to hit them, you know. So
do you specialize in anything specific in the shooting field?
Well, we specialize in defensive shooting.
I'm talking about the shop
Oh, the
materials,
shop material? Okay, no,
products and stuff.
no, we're kind of a wide range
Mhm.
of products. Obviously, we do sell a lot of handguns for personal protection. We do sell a lot of rifles like ARs and stuff for, most people get that for sport, for fun. Or I don't really recommend an AR for home protection because that bullet will penetrate a lot of walls, especially the way that they build the houses around here. So, home defense shotgun is excellent home defense. Or handgun for carry out in public is obviously easier to conceal than a shotgun. So, yeah, so we have a lot of handguns. We have a lot of long guns, and we have a lot of cowboy guns as well for the cowboy shooters. So we do a lot of, sell a lot, especially to the mounted shooters because I'm involved in it. So we use a kind of a specialized 3.5 inch, usually 45 long pole, and we shoot a crimp blank in that competition because we're riding horses. We're even shooting towards where people are. So obviously you can't have any targets closer than 30 feet from the fence because our blanks will only go 20 feet, so. Yeah, so we have kind of a big variety. I mean, modern guns, for carry purposes, and me personally, you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Does your shop also have a gunsmith?
We do. Magnum Mike, he's not at our location, but if you have a gun that needs work on, you bring it into the shop. We'll log it in, he'll pick it up, he'll work on it, and then he'll return it, and he'll pick it up at the shop. So, yeah, I've known Mike for many years. We met when we were doing gun shows together, and he would be next door or at the table next to me, and we became friends. And then he started doing our gun stuffing for us. And at first he has his own shop, but it would be open to walk-ins, and he just told me, so I can't get any work done because I'm trying to work on guns, and people are coming in and asking questions and trying to get me to work on a gun right now, and I've got 10 guns back there I'm trying to get done. So he stopped doing that, and he just now goes to different gun stores, gets the guns that need to be worked on, takes them back to his shop, and then returns them to the gun store. Now, if you need a private meeting with him because maybe you need to get a shotgun fitted to you because it's going to cut it down to fit you properly, then we'll make arrangements for you to meet him at the shop so he can measure you and take the dimensions that he needs to cut that gun down for you personally. But yeah, we do, and he does excellent work. And he can build guns. He builds you a competition gun. He does a lot of what he calls a 25-point safety check. So if you have a gun that has been sitting around for a long time, he'll take it, strip it down completely. He will clean all the internal parts in a sonic cleaner. He'll inspect all the springs. If any of the springs need to be replaced, like the hammer spring, the trigger spring, he'll replace it, and just does a really thorough service on your gun. Like my competition guns, I send them to him every year because they get used hard. So every year I send them to him and let him go over them, clean them for him.
Do you work on revolvers?
He does, yes. And he's really good on revolvers. Matter of fact, all my revolvers that I own, I have him do action jobs on all of them. Because your trigger pull on a revolver, especially like a defensive gun like the J-frame, and I have one with a shrouded hammer, so you really can't cock it because it's too difficult. They're a heavy trigger pull. They're, probably between 9 to 12 pounds. And so I get him to lighten it as much as he can, but also maintain reliability. Because if you lighten them too much, you start getting light strikes and the gun doesn't go off. So I just done it. Mike, I want you to lighten this as light as you can, but maintaining good reliability on this gun for me.
Can you build them up?
Uh,
I got a light striking revolver.
You can fix it. Yeah. What might have to happen with that, it may need a little bit heavier hammer springs. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, let's just go around. Go ahead.
I have a couple quick comments. My name's Ted and Larry. Thanks for this group. We appreciate it very much.
Sure.
Ken, great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and for customers, so I appreciate it. You brought up about the insurance policies, especially if guys are going to carry. I'm 100% agreement with you. You're going to carry outside your house. you gotta have insurance, because you brought up an excellent point. In most cases, you might be arrested, and you're gonna have to post bail. And most of these policies, especially when you mentioned, sometimes they post the bail up to $1 million.
Yeah.
And that's critical in addition to paying for your defense. So I appreciate you bringing that insurance up. I'm just curious, two other questions. What's your everyday carry gun?
Okay, so every day, well, I have several that I like, but my favorite one is a SIG P365
Yeah.
because it's a 9mm, which is sufficient for carry. If you look at the new ammunition that's out for 9mm compared to what we had years ago, it's much more effective. It's almost as good as a 40 cal now, some of the hollow points that are out there. Basically, a 40, if you look at the FBI study where they say, hey, one shot stopping capability. That doesn't mean you killed the person. That means they stopped after the first shot. For a 40, it's about 94% effective. 9mm is about 92% effective, but you have higher capacity in your 9 than you do your 40. You get a couple extra rounds. So that 365 is very small, very compact, and very accurate. I mean, I was impressed the first time I shot one of those, how accurate that gun is for a little carry gun.
Is that the 365 XL you have?
No, I have the standard 365, and then I just added an extension mag to the mag, so it fit my hand a little bit better. Now the X is a little bit longer, but that came out. I got mine before the X was there, so I just put the extended mag on, and that works perfectly.
Two more quick things. I heard last night ammo prices are starting to come down. Is that true?
So let me tell you, so ammo has been a problem ever since COVID. Well, it's been a problem ever since Obama was in office. When he got in office, there became like a 2 to 3 year backlog on ordering ammunition. Then with COVID hitting, there again, because there was such a demand on guns and ammunition, ammo became scarce again. Prices went up. So to answer your question, I don't see them really come down that much right now, because right now there's now a critical shortage in 9 again, because guess where a lot of it's going? Ukraine. So the ammunition is in such demand, they can't keep up with the demand. And of course the prices are higher. I mean, we do get some ammunition in from time to time that's less expensive, like your Federal. I mean, but I remember not too long ago when it was $10.99 a box. Now it's cheap at $20.99 a box, but we don't get it that often. And trust me, when it comes in, if I put it on Facebook, bam, gone, and
Just curious. Thank you for that.
yeah, I don't think you're gonna see the prices come down real low, and I don't think they'll ever get back down to where they used to be.
Last point, Larry, again, great for having the group. Chris and I belong to a men's group here in Trilogy, and we faced a lot of resistance when we formed our group. And so you getting this group is great for the men here. I will tell you, when the changes here from Shea the HOA, we can get involved as a group. For instance, if you want to advertise a firearm on our MTL website, they'll write you right away and say, you can't do this. My response to them was, isn't a car a deadly weapon? Isn't a chainsaw a deadly weapon? Our kitchen knife is a deadly weapon? Weed whacker, what's the difference? So as a group, we could certainly affect some changes here, which I'm sure Ken would agree with, because some HOAs don't allow people to even own firearms, which if the HOA agrees to that, it's not against federal law technically. But here, I believe that we need a little more power here. I mean, a lot of us have guns if we want to trade and sell. Before they started breaking back about that, if I put them on at 2 9mm, I remember 2 75-year-old ladies called me within an hour and bought both of them. And so I just think we need to definitely move forward with what you're doing here with this group. There are a lot more men to be involved. I don't mean to take so much time.
Oh, no, you're good.
You've done a great job.
No, that's a good point too, because there are so many HOAs that do have restrictions on guns. I mean, just like I tell you, the Happy Trail, I go there, I do classes for them all the time. Every year I do it. CCW class for them, at least 1 or 2 a year. I go talk to their gun club periodically, you know, and of course, same rule, no guns in the clubhouse, you know, no guns in any of their facilities there that are open to the public at all. They're all posted, no guns. You know, and reality is this, if somebody's gonna come in and they're gonna shoot someone, they don't care about a sign on the door that says no guns. So the only thing that's doing is taking your ability away to defend yourself by posting no guns. And I'll tell you, it's not a safe environment, really, in my opinion, because now the person, the good law-abiding citizen, is not going to do something wrong with that gun. As long as they're trained and they know, like, you know, that gun's going to stay in your holster until you're in a situation where you may need it to defend yourself or someone else's life. So unfortunately, a lot of restrictions at a lot of HOAs. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a good example of what happened at one of the HOAs years ago. It was out at Vantana Lakes at their homeowner association. So one of the people in the HOA lost their home. They had a lot of issues with the HOA as well. And, you know, so he made threats. So they decided, well, we're going to have an armed guard at our meetings. And it was their, guess what? Their gun club meeting, which they were not allowed to have guns at. So they voted and asked the HOA, can we have an armed guard? Can we hire one? Yes. So they had an armed guard at every meeting and nothing happened. Then they decided they would get rid of the armed guard. And the very first meeting they got rid of the armed guard, the guy came in and shot, I don't know, I can't remember how many people. And then 2 people had to jump on him and disarm him. And he shot several people there at the HOA, at the gun club meeting.
I'm sorry, we've only got about 5 minutes left. Do you have another question? Sure, go ahead.
Have you ever had any experience with the lawyers provided by United States Concealed Carry Association?
No, no. Only the ones I've only been familiar with and had any affiliation with was US Law Shield.
There's some good articles on Google. If you type in compare firearms insurance companies, stuff like that. The one you mentioned is very, very good.
Yeah.
But it compares a graph, what the different ones offer. And what they cost.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's thank Ken very much for coming down today.